Merry Christmas, everybody. I was talking to my good friend Santa Claus here a couple days ago, and let me know that some of you were getting ready to go back home for the holidays. Some of you weren't too excited. Some of you were trying to figure out how you're going to make it through. And my personal recommendation is alcohol. It helps everything. Social interactions, familial interactions. Might get a little awkward with your uncle. If he has too much alcohol, you might have some weird discussions at the dinner table, and probably should have had those at Thanksgiving. Could have saved yourself some money on Christmas presents, but we're past that at this point. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through give you some options, and then take you through how to make my favorite holiday cocktail. Super simple cocktail, but we'll get to that here in a minute. So some options I like to look at, kind of what you're feeling, when you're feeling it. Always a great choice is a Christmas style beer, something like a holiday stout, like a Jingle Java or a Hardywood, or plenty of options. Just turn around in a liquor store and you'll probably find about 4 or 5 more. Holiday spiced ales are also a really good choice. Tons of options if you want to stick with beer. If you want to do Busch Lattes or Miller Lights or High Lifes, no shame in that either. Whatever you got to do to get yourself through. Moving on from that, if you want to be a little classier, maybe you don't want Aunt Peggy knowing you're having a couple before dinner, you can always go with the solid spiced eggnog. I like to spiked eggnog. I like to spike mine with brandy. The fruitier flavors of the brandy plus the alcohol really cuts through that thick, creamy sweetness of the eggnog well, and it makes a really good drink. Moving on, if you want to get a little more advanced, maybe impress somebody. Impress that girl you've been trying to bring home for Christmas and she finally said yes. You go something like a Brandy Alexander. Not a super difficult drink, but it's more than pouring something into a glass. Or if you're thinking after dinner, it's also a great after dinner drink. My personal favorite after dinner drink, it has been a family tradition of mine for years growing up in Wisconsin, was always grasshoppers after Christmas dinner. Go through open presents, do the white elephant, and then grandma would bust out the grasshoppers. Always made for a real good end of the Christmas day. But maybe it's Christmas morning and the kids are being a little too rambunctious. Obviously you could go basic and put some whiskey in your coffee, or some Kahlua or some bourbon cream. All also really good options. But I always like to mix it up a little bit. You can do something like a hot toddy. It's a more whiskey forward version of whiskey and coffee, without the coffee. It's whiskey and hot water and lemon, so it's pretty good. It's also a really good cold remedy. So if you don't like taking all the over-the-counter medicines and all that, it's a great way to soothe the sore throat. Or after you have 3 or 4 of them, you don't really care how your throat feels anymore. Alternatively, you could do a Tom and Jerry. Growing up, like I said, I grew up in the Midwest. Very common drink to have around the holidays. I don't know if it's found anywhere outside of the Midwest. But if not, you should try to find it, because it makes a pretty solid drink. Livens up that, you can do that Christmas morning, after dinner. It's flexible. Plus, it's the holidays. Who really cares when you're drinking what? And then you could go, two versions of one of my favorite cocktails is the Old Fashioned. So here we've got the Wisconsin Old Fashioned, which is the correct way to make it Old Fashioned. Makes your drink go a little bit longer, a little bit further, and taste a little bit less like alcohol. That's why you get a little mod on your Friday night fish fries. And then you just got the classic Old Fashioned. I prefer to make mine with bourbon. I'm a big fan of bourbon. Which does bring me to the cocktail of the hour, which I like to call a drink. So it's a super, super simple drink to make. You only need 3 things: a glass, some air, and something to drink. So you could go something bottom shelf, like a Kentucky Tavern, or something else that you find way at the bottom rack, or maybe like a Kessler's, or basically anything at the bottom shelf. You could go super fancy and pick yourself up a bottle of Blanton's, or like a limited edition Jack Daniels. But for purposes of this video, and what I find myself doing most often, is grab something quality, middle of the road, not too expensive, not too cheap. Obviously, if you're drinking enough that you're gonna have a hangover, you want that hangover to be as painless as possible. So for this video, I'm going to use Maker's Mark. It's a good wheated bourbon. It's probably I'm a big fan of the wheated bourbons, so if you got a Weller or Bernheim, Maker's, they're all going to be very similar. But we're going to go with Maker's on this one. So obviously now I've got liquor, glass, and air. Now you just got to put them together. So I really like this cocktail because it's super flexible. So depends on what the situation is, how you're feeling. You can make this, kind of customize it to how you like. So there's three different ways you can make this. I'm kind of going to show you a combination of them. Obviously, the first one is you take it, maybe you're just out with some friends, you're sitting, if it's nice by you, you're sitting around a bonfire, Christmas tree, whatever, you just take the bottle, pour some in your glass. There you go. Now you get yourself a drink. It's great. It's nice, light. You have a couple of these, you're feeling good by the end of the night. You're having some good stories, reminiscing on the old times with the friends. Well, maybe you're with your family, and old Uncle Dave he's getting to be a little much, so now if you really want to get scientific about it, you'll grab your jigger, or your measure, or something, and just just try to track how long this night's going to last, and you just maybe add a little bit more to that cup. Make it go a little bit further. That way, if you have to go to the bathroom, you got a conversation with Uncle Dave, and then you might find yourself talking to Aunt Peggy in the kitchen and end up mashing the potatoes for dinner. So you got to be careful. But maybe you're staying at the in-laws and you actually found this in the bottom shelf of the cabinet. So you want to make it last, and so you get yourself a pour spout and you just start counting 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count. I mean, you can do a bartender's count. You can count how many times you want to run your head through the wall, how many times your spouse has asked you to leave, all kinds of things. But then the third or the other way to do it, you just going back to the first way. You just measure a little bit less, care a little bit less, because heaven forbid the in-laws are staying with you. You fill that cup up. Yeah, you got yourself a drink. Cheers and Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a great holiday.